Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Hitting Zone podcast. That's where we knock baseball conversations out of the park. It's been kind of interesting because I've had some pitchers on the show, so they would probably like to not think that those baseballs are getting hit out. But that's what we do. We bring on a bunch of different baseball topics. That's what the show is about. We couldn't do this show without our sponsors at Game 7 Baseball, game7baseball.com. Our friends, good friends over there at Prime Sports Midwest, 1550 Ocello Drive down in Fenton, and there's a location in St. Peters. Bat Demo, October 5th. That's at the Fenton location, correct? Yeah, they don't have stuff yet at the St. Peters. October 5th, down in Fenton, there's a big bat demo down there. A lot of big vendors, so make sure you go out, check them out on the socials, and obviously head down there. What time is it? I think it's 9 to 1. 9 a.m. to 1, and pick up the latest trends. We will be out there. Brian will be out there. I will be. I have a wedding that day, so we're preparing for a wedding. So anyways, let's move forward with the show. I'm excited about this show. I met this gentleman, I guess, back in March. Had a lot of fun conversations. He's a young cat. He's obviously a little different with some of the way that he is prepared versus how I prepared, and so we had a lot of fun conversations down there. If you could, sir, please introduce yourself to our fans here in St. Louis.
Yeah, I got you. So my name is Owen Little. I've been playing baseball my whole entire life, ever since that I could walk. I've been blessed to be a part of a training facility now as I've gotten older, but I've obviously been a part of the many different versions of baseball that have came and gone, and it's definitely been a great experience.
What you are a pitcher, correct?
Yes, sir. I'm a left-handed.
There we go, left-handed. It makes sense with the long hair and the hat backwards kind of thing.
Of course. We're all a little goofy.
You lefties are a little goofy for sure. It's always, and especially if you're a bullpen guy, and it gets even more weird for the lefties out there in the bullpen. But man, what I had a pleasure of having fun conversations with you down there, because you took time out of your day through lunch, the different training and stuff, and just kind of talked about your experiences in baseball. And I want to talk about them today on the show a little bit. How old are you?
I'm 24 years old.
Yep. So you're still pretty young and going through the process in professional baseball. And kind of the differences and some of the things we talked about was kind of what your expectations were from youth to high school, high school and beyond. And I want to talk about that just a little bit before our fans here in St. Louis, because I like to train, right? And I think training is very important. And what is the one thing that you are learning today that is very different than what you thought at 12, 13, 14, going into high school, and then kind of beyond high school?
Of course. If I'm being completely honest, it wouldn't even be revolved around training per se. Like, regardless of the programs, I would say just consistency with what you're doing. Like, understanding that, like, having the longevity of doing the same thing day in, day out, not just being like sporadic with random workouts or just what I see on Instagram is what I'm doing that day. Just like putting together a core workout or a core fundamental breakdown that you can actually build off of and stay consistent with, I think is the biggest thing, hands down.
And consistency has to. I mean, the one thing that, and we'll talk about Top Velocity a little bit here. The one thing that I liked about Top Velocity is it did give that program for consistency, because I think one of the hardest things for young kids is to understand what a program is, and it's they have to pay somebody to do it. So if they have somebody writing their programs and things like that, and Top Velocity has created this, based on results, peer reviews and things like that, and that's where I think the program comes into the consistency part that you talked about, because you do have a schedule, you do have your days laid out, your weeks laid out, you have your off days and things like that, and so what is, more than anything, what is consistency though? Is it 3-4 times a week? Is it an hour a day? Is it 10 minutes a day? Is it what is consistency for you?
Yeah, so my consistency right now is obviously, like, I just got into my off season, and compared to a lot of other program per se is ours is pretty intense. So like my off season days are pretty long. Like they're shooting anywhere between 5 to 8 hours a day. I'm in here, and that's consisting of like in the morning, hour and a half of mobility. I'm hitting my throwing sessions are around an hour, hour and a half between med balls and baseballs, and then after that I'm in the weight room for anywhere between 2 to 3 hours, and then after that finishing up with some anaerobic and conditioning stuff for another 45 minutes to an hour after that. So my days are pretty packed. My I would say that schedule is about 3 times a week on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. Lifting is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Wednesdays is just throwing, and then the weekends I just hit my mobility sessions. So I'm going 7 days a week, especially in off-season training.
Yeah, a little different for you. Obviously, you're 24 years old and trying to progress into your professional career. And going back to high school, so I had to put you in some high school shoes or
Yeah,
some youth shoes. We obviously, as a high school kid, we don't have the ability to, spend that kind of time. And so, what do you think are some important things to do? I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but stuff to do during the week. So if a kid's only got 30 minutes, 45 minutes, what do you think is from your experience? And I'm not the program's experience, but your experience.
yeah,
What do you think is an important thing to hit every day, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour and 30 minutes?
100%. I mean, as you're developing, I would just find a good weight room program. You know what I mean? Like if you can dedicate yourself to just bettering your body and becoming a better athlete all around, and it can be something small, like guys that are developing, like if you can sit down and do 100 push-ups a day, you know what I mean, and get consistent with the calisthenic body weight stuff and understanding like, hey, I can do 100 push-ups today. That's small. That takes 20-30 minutes, but you can really build some strength with that. So and I wanted to talk about like back in my high school days, the stuff that I'm doing now isn't even close to what I was doing then. It was I got to practice 15 minutes before, you run a pole, you do some warm-ups, you play catch and you're into it. You know what I mean? Like I was that. I was that, and I changed that. So I like that you get to bring up this stuff about what the past was, because the past wasn't what I was doing now. And I think it's good to like talk about that kind of stuff, that you can evolve and you can get better and you can find better programs.
Yeah, you didn't have. I mean, this past year was your first year of professional baseball. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, so and you at the age of 23 or the age of 24?
It was at the age of 24.
Okay, so here we are. A couple years removed from high school. Did you play college baseball?
Yes, I did play college baseball.
Okay, so just a few years removed from all of this, and all you've done is continued to grow. When did you first kind of experience like the regiments, the programs, the consistency? When did you realize that was a important piece of the puzzle if you wanted to continue into baseball as you grow older?
Really, I didn't know until I got to Top Velocity, because it was the first place that I saw results from training. Because all the places that I was at previously, it was like I came in there throwing 80 and I left there throwing 80. So it was like in my head, my previous thought process was I was at the max, that that none of these development places or none of these programs were going to work for me because I didn't see results personally.
That I mean, so you talked about the gym, and you think about the high school side again, and getting bigger. Were you more on the scrawny side? Not scrawny, but like you're tall. What are you, about six? You're like 6'2", something like that, right?
6'4", yeah.
Okay, so I saw a few. Whatever. I'm getting older, so I'm going the opposite direction.
Yeah,
Six
we're all
four is
right.
definitely different, but that's pretty tall. I meant to say lanky, not scrawny, but you were kind of a
Yeah.
lanky guy. I'm gonna assume, because seeing kind of the limbs and knowing you've seen you kind of in person. Do you think that what helped you progress was more of the weight training side versus even the program itself?
100%, because I was one of the guys, I didn't pick up a weight until I was 20 years old. I didn't step in my first weight room until I was 20 years old. So like my first couple of years of college wasn't in the weight room. All of high school was never in the weight room. So it was just, I had so much potential there because I had no foundation of it.
Man, that's crazy to me, because I was a short, like I wasn't short, but I was 5'10" to I guess about eighth grade year, and I was not a confident kid, and I got into football with the high school, and the high school started handing out these workout programs. If you wanted to do this, and I didn't want to play on the freshman team. All I wanted to do was make the JV football team, and so they were like, "Hey, you got to get in a weight room." and all of a sudden that belly fat or the baby fat kind of went away, and I was still thick kid, but I started getting stronger, and as I started getting stronger, I started to gain confidence. I started running a little bit faster. Some things had changed for me because of the weight room, and I cannot stress it enough. And I think a lot of kids maybe, and I could be wrong, but are they shy of the weight room? Are they shy of the public because there's a 24 to 26-year-old in there that's, jacked, or, there's a lot of fit people that walk into the gym, and the gym can be intimidating. Um,
100%.
how do you think, young kids especially, because I'm trying to encourage my 14-year-old kids to start lifting, how can they, get over that fear of being in the gym with people like that?
Yeah, 100%. It's just the hardest pill to swallow with it is accepting failure. Like that was the biggest thing like when I got in here is understand that like to get to the level that you want to be, there's going to be failure. So like pushing yourself to failure. And the other thing is those big guys that are jacked in the gym, as I've learned, tend to be the nicest. They tend to be the most helping. All you do is just have to reach out, and sometimes it's hard to get out of that comfort zone. But those big guys that are willing to help, like we have a guy in the Orioles organization right now that's like 6'8", 240 in here right now, and he's the best person in the weight room for me. Like he weighs 80 pounds more than I do. He is 4 inches taller than I am, and he's pushing me every day to be better. So like that's one of those prime examples that yeah, he might be bigger and better than I am, but he's still willing to sacrifice his time to help me.
Man, that's a lot. That says a lot too, and I feel like that's what the gym is, and as awkward as it might be to be a little skinny kid or a little fat kid, whatever, you go in there. Everybody started at a place that you're at, and so you might have somebody in there that can throw up 150-pound dumbbells, and you're like, man, that's like I want to do that. Well, you can, but it's going to take time. And I bet you if you asked him, he's going to tell you that the process took a while. It didn't happen
Yeah.
overnight. There's no overnight success unless, they're squeezing a juice or something. But I
Yeah.
think about that's a shout out to Pauly Shore. I think it's Pauly Shore squeezing the juice. I
Yeah.
think is that it? I think
I
it's
think so.
it. Biodome, maybe, I'm not sure. But anywho, that's how it started for me. It took time, and that's baseball, right? Like the
Yeah.
process you have to love, but you have to love the long term relationship
Yeah.
with that process.
And I think it was like a really good point that you brought in the confidence aspect of it too. Like when you can see those results and you see your weights going up, like for me, for example, like when I get done with those 3 hour weight room days, I feel like Superman, right? Because me as a pitcher, I understand that there's no pitcher that's in the weight room doing Olympic lifting, that's doing these full ass to grass squats, that's moving all this weight. I know there's nobody else doing that. So like it does bring me that sense of confidence that like, hey, I'm doing what nobody else is doing right now. I'm working harder than anybody else right now. Like it does definitely bring that sense of confidence, and I think it's great that you brought that up.
Yeah, that's the behind the closed doors, what nobody sees. Like
Yep.
when you're on Instagram and you're posting your Instagram trainings, it's more on when that miles per hour lights up and it's 90 or it's 92, it's 94, or their PRs. That's what everybody gets to see. They're not seeing the time that you're spending in a week in the gym, or when the lights aren't shining on you. And so I think people want this instant gratification, especially with what social media has done for us. And, you know, I think I always try to put my change. I try to adapt every day. And I can remember growing up, and ESPN would always have the top 10. It would always be the top 10 from the night
Mhm.
before, whether it was a dunk or, catch or, diving play, a home run, big home run or whatever. So we've always had this ability to see, superstars or athletes having these high moments, And it wasn't so often that you got to see the downside. The one thing I did like about ESPN, though, is they did have the not so top 10.
Not top 10. Yeah.
Yeah, and they would have guys tripping and falling and embarrassing themselves, or whatever the case may be. But it was always geared towards being funny. You never really saw that grind. You didn't know that the night before. Or I'll bring up David Justice for when he was a Yankee. Brian's gonna hate me for this probably, but he's not gonna hate me. But he's probably gonna dislike this or be disappointed. One of the two. The Yankees, where he was like 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts, and comes up and walks off a game with a home run. And the only thing you got on TV was the home run. You didn't get
Yeah.
his 0 for 4 with 4Ks. And I didn't know that then. So I was wanted to be, David Justice walking off,
Yeah.
in a game. And I just, do you think that like things like Instagram or Reels or TikTok, do you think that that is there's a downside to that, or do you think it's just how we perceive it and how we need to encourage our young people to kind of perceive that information?
I think people just have to understand that like it's a false perception of what it really is. Like my job, right, as a pitcher is to throw strikes and get guys out. So then the perception is like say I post a video on social media, right, in my PR, okay? Say I hit 92, 94, something crazy, and I post that 6 second clip. Well, now the perception is everybody thinks that I throw 94 miles an hour every single pitch. When that's really not it. So it's almost like a false narrative that's being put out there, but understand that like that's what the people want to see, right? Even though that's not the realistic expectation. So and that's where I am one of the few people that can be real about it. So like I post my PRs, right? And I'll have coaches or people reach out and be like, "Oh, how hard are you throwing right now?" Yeah, sure, I just top 92, but I'm still sitting 88, 90. So that's also the perception too is like just because there's that 6 second clip of me hitting one number, that's not where I'm at. I'm still sitting 2 to 3 below that, but I'm still chasing to sit that number. So that's the perception on social media. That's a really great point. Is like all this stuff that's on social media, take it with a grain of salt because it's not realistic in the grand scheme of things. And it goes back to what you were saying before. Like there was so much work that was put into that you just didn't see. All you saw was the result. You saw the 6 second result and you didn't see the 8 hours that was put in before that.
Yeah, that's key because I think that goes with just anything in life, right? Like, I think about when I was when I worked for a mortgage company and I was an underwriter. It took me a long time before I could ever underwrite a home that was $1 million. I had to spend about 3 years being an underwriter, writing homes at 250K, and then as I continued to be good at my job, I was able to underwrite bigger loans, which obviously got me bigger dollars in my pocketbook, right? So I was one of, I think 3 people in the entire facility, 4,000 people that had a chance to do that. So it meant something. But nobody's like, everybody was like, yeah, how did you get to do that? I was like, I put 3 years in
Exactly.
of trying to be the best that I could be. And if I failed, unfortunately, I had to start all over,
Yeah.
and it's like, at least if you failed today, you didn't hit your 90 today and it just was a bad day. You still have a chance tomorrow to recover or find out, what you were feeling that day. You could write it in journals and things like that. So I just think that everything is a process, and it takes its time. I think this is like our 16th podcast for this show or something like that, close to that number, and it's been a process. My first time on it, I was nervous. I didn't know
Of
what to say.
course.
I actually had the guy that's behind you. He was our first episode, and
Oh,
Brent,
that's cool.
and just like, man, I was nervous. I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
What do I
Yeah.
do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do I have scripts? Do I just go off the cuff? And now it's like I can do both. I feel confident doing both. I'm getting our sponsors in now. I'm not forgetting about that because I'm not nervous. And
Yeah.
that's the gym too, right? Everything is literally put one day in at a time. It's just like the game. It's one pitch at a time. It's one at bat at a time. It's one out at a time. Ultimately, one inning at a time. Then it's one game at a time.
Yeah.
I mean, that is exactly what you're going through every day, right? It's one lift at a time. It's one rep at a time. And if you focus on the quality of that one rep, it's going to eventually translate to 90. You started at
Of
80,
course.
got to 90. Now we're flirting with 92, 93s. And that didn't happen overnight. You had to stick to the process, right?
Exactly. And I would say like a huge back to the confidence thing, I would say like the confidence comes through routines. Like that's the biggest thing, like routines and consistency. Like knowing that every day for me is mapped out for me for the next my whole entire off season. Like I could tell you what I'm doing 3 months from now. And that's just because I have my routines that I know that I have to do day in, day out to get me to that point, to get me to that. And it's no guessing. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't me just like waking up and guessing, putting this together. This is me taking my AI report, understanding all the things that I need to do and where I need to take my numbers, my measurables, and where I need to get them to.
Yeah, do you think like if you were to stray from the program, well, let me go back here. I think one of the biggest things that
Yeah.
you said there was talking about, when you were, you have your roadmap, and it's not you're not waking up looking for something to do. You have your roadmap given to you. Do you think that that also could be like a big reason why maybe some of these youngsters that might be high school kids that they don't have a plan and they don't have a structure, so it's much easier just not to do it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
100%.
clearly a plan, you got to have one and not just map out a day. Like you need to map out the structure because it's much easier, I think, to stick to because you don't have to spend an hour trying to build your day, right? I mean, that's kind of what I got out of what you said.
Yeah, 100%. And like the consistency part of it's huge because that's how you see the results. Like, so I'm consistent with my routines. I'm doing the same thing day in, day out. So that means when I'm 2 or 3 weeks down the road, I'm seeing all of those things improve because I'm doing them day in, day out. It's not one of these things that I come in and I only do one day and I don't do it again for another 3 weeks. It's like I'm drilling these things day in, day out to get them better.
Yeah, have you ever? And I'm sure it could have been a cold or an injury or anything like that. What happens like if you stray from this program or from your program, I should say, and not specifically this program?
Yeah, I got you. Since I've been at Top V, it's been really hard for me to not do it. Like I'm not gonna lie to you, I have not because my thing is personally I've seen guys that have came in here and started throwing really hard with the program, and then I've seen them decide to go a different direction, and I've seen the results that have happened because of that. And so I've been pretty like scared on the straight and narrow of like sticking to this and what works for me. And like I said before, this is the only program I got results out of. So it's really hard for me to turn my back on something that actually built me up. But I know that if I stopped doing this program, that all of my gains would go out the window. I would not be able to hold anything that I build.
Is that back to the structure of the program, like mapping out again your whole entire off season, not just a week to week?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Because like mapping out that like future too, what it helps me with is just understanding like where I'm trying to get to. So like it could be like little things, like we have our levels that we're trying to get to, and like right now I just got done with hypertrophy. I'm jumping into level 3, so now my goal is to only get 4 weeks of level 3 before I'm ready for level 4 to get into our hatch stuff. So it's like those are little goals that might be a month away, but I'm making sure that every day I'm getting closer to that goal.
What's your nutrition like? Eating
It could be
habits?
better. Yeah, it could be
It
better.
could
I'm
be better in
definitely
the size of helping you get a little stronger, bigger, or like I'm not. Obviously, you should be able to eat a pizza, and if you wanted a
yeah,
chocolate cream pie from Waffle House at 2 a.m.
of
because you're
course.
you're still a young
Yeah.
kid. But I mean, like, are you talking about the growth of the body, or just like what could be better about your nutrition?
Yeah, 100%. Mine's just caloric intake. My foods that I eat tend to be super healthy. Like I eat a lot of whole foods, a lot of one ingredient foods, stuff like that. My problem is caloric intake is I'm definitely burning more than I'm eating throughout the day. Like my biggest thing since I've got here has been gaining weight, and I've only really gotten up to like 195-ish, and I need to be breaking like the 200-pound threshold easy. Like that's the low end for me is like 200, 205, and I've never got that here. So it's like
Uh,
that's the discipline that I'm still looking for is stuff that doesn't even have any regards to my training per se. Is I'm looking for the discipline on the nutrition aspect of it to be able to sit down and eat 5,000 calories a day.
is it just because you? I mean, I feel like I could go to Taco Bell and eat 5,000 calories, but those aren't the good 5,000 calories that I need. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking
Yeah,
about adding proteins, the carbohydrates, having 400 grams of carbohydrates to fuel the body. Because I'm going to go on a limb and probably say, if that's the case, you're probably eating anywhere from like 22 to 2,600 calories, 2,800 calories a day. And you're
yeah,
probably burning 80 to 90% of that with what you're telling me your workout is.
yeah, yeah.
So it's going to be very difficult for you to gain any weight. That
Of
at
course.
least
Especially being
that's
in
a
this down here.
yeah. What, is it still hot? Pretty hot down there. I think we're like in the high 70s, 80s right now. I know in the
It's actually been
summertime it's hot.
yeah, actually been pretty gorgeous here in the fall. It's like been up to like 85, 80, so it's been pretty nice here.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's a hot box in the places you work because I don't think you guys have AC or.
No. That's a camp privilege. I'm kind of outing Brent there a little bit, but yeah, that's a camp privilege only.
That is, it's definitely when we went down there in March. It was actually I was shocked that it was kind of warm down there, and I guess I brought the tornadoes with me. We had some tornado action here in Missouri, and then I got down to the airport in New Orleans, and I was crossing the bay or whatever it's called, and Causeway, and there was a tornado just kind of following me over to Covington, and I was like, man, sorry guys, I brought it with me, but it knocked the temps down, and we got out to camp, and there's like AC is like, yeah, it's a privilege to have the camp. So all of our guys love Friday, Saturday, Sunday training because uh, it's a lot cooler than in there than it is during the week. So, but anyways, man, kind of getting back to just the nutrition side, and you talk about kind of the struggles of that. One of the things that I ask my kids the same thing. It's they have school during the day, right? So their 8 hours of training has to involve some schooling. And I'm asking their eating habits, and a lot of kids will skip breakfast because they wake up late and they skip breakfast, and then they'll eat their lunch or whatever, and then they don't eat again until after games, especially in season. How important is it to wake up the extra 30 minutes to make sure you get a meal in, have a supplement, 2 hours later, a supplement meal, so it could be a protein shake, protein bars, whatever. How important is it to try to find a way to eat? Because obviously you're struggling with this. You're
Yeah,
not hungry, but what is something a high school kid could do in preparation with their food?
so what I've seen to be successful through a lot of other guys is just like staying strapped with really good snacks and eating throughout the day, like every couple hours, and getting those four or 500 calories in with snacks every couple hours between your meals. I've seen that work for a lot of guys, things like that. That's what I'm gonna try getting on. I'm gonna try to get on the mass gainer shakes in the morning just to get like the little extra calories in. Um, it's it's discipline. That's what it really comes down to. Like I know it sounds cliche, but it's hard to do. You know what I mean? Because it's something that has nothing to do with the discipline training per se, but it's also something that can affect your training just as much.
That I think that's probably the hardest part because I mean I think about me, I'm overweight, and I think about the discipline that I need to have. It's on the reverse of almost what you have going on. Like it's not that I need to eat less. I still need to fuel my body. I still need to exercise and things like that. But when it comes down to having a bowl of moose tracks or something, I'm gonna go have me a bowl of moose tracks at 10 o'clock at night because I'm
Yeah,
feeling about having some moose tracks. I probably should drink
yeah,
some water and go to bed, right? I
yeah,
mean, that would be the ideal thing to do. But discipline has to happen both ways, whether you're trying to cut some weight or you're trying to gain some weight. And it's the hard part, right? It's not the fun. There's no fun in it. I'd rather have a Snickers than have to worry about I probably shouldn't because I worked out today or whatever the case may be. I'm like, I'm going to eat a Snickers because I want to have a Snickers. That's not even my candy bar
yeah,
of choice, but for me, it's like going to the gym when I was able to go. It wasn't hard to go to the gym. I loved going. I don't love to diet, or I don't want to use diet. I don't love to eat right. I want to eat what I
yeah.
want when I want. I try to be conscious, but I'm like, man, that's again, Moose Tracks is my thing right now. I don't know about your favorite ice cream, but my favorite ice cream happens to be Moose Tracks.
What about baseball?
Hey, you want Dr. Pat to jump in on this really fast?
We can say hi to Dr. Pat.
Hey, Dr. You want to hop in?
Thought you were talking baseball, not ice cream.
Well, hey, you like ice cream. I've seen you chop down some of those sandwiches down there, and when we went to what the heck
Oh
was it?
boys.
Poor Boys. That's what it
Oh boy.
was. Po' Boys.
Place.
Yeah, we're right
Good
down
old
the
Bull
street
Boy.
from the facility. That was a good sandwich.
Oh yeah.
That's one thing I like. I think every day that I was down there, I ate a po' boy sandwich. Whether it was catfish one day, I think I had catfish. I had roast beef, and then I had shrimp.
Yeah, I
So I
was gonna
had
say
one.
roast beef for the win, though, right? Roast beef is the best one.
I like catfish, so
Oh,
let me just tell you, I'd eat all three of them with
100%.
equal
Yeah,
pleasure.
yeah.
And I had no problem. That probably put about 1,200 calories in my body. So because I ate the whole thing, not half. But no, shout out to Dr. Pat. Dr. Pat does your guys' nutrition. He handles nutrition, kind of what we were just kind of talking about. And um,
Yeah.
again, just the importance of it. And again, the confidence that I gained, which I'm assuming at the age of 20 and now 24, it built some confidence for you to walk in the gym and say, hey, I'm part of this struggle that everybody else is having, right?
Yeah.
Anybody that is physically fit has had some sort of struggle because they've had to wake up at 5 o'clock or whatever it is after work. I have to go. It is not an option. It is a dedication. It is the consistency that you talked about earlier. And I couldn't agree anymore. The consistency. It's not about necessarily what you do. I think it's about consistently doing something that involves the sport.
Yes.
I've tried to explain to my families, if you can't hit today because it's raining and you're outside, go catch a game that's in California for a couple hours. Just watch a couple innings of the game. You're going to get, if you sit down for 30 minutes, you might get 2 or 3 innings of baseball now with the pitch clock and some of the rules that they have.
Yeah.
So you might be able to get to see a guy hit through the lineup maybe once or twice, maybe your favorite player or something like that, and listen to the game on air. It's watch the
Yeah.
announcers talk about how maybe a misplay or things like that, and that's an IQ session that is consistently being invested into the baseball. And again, you're not going to go to work every day in baseball because some things take away if you're banged up a little bit, but there's still something you can do. Some guy
Every
might
day.
be banged up in the lower body. Well, we could take the lower body completely out of exercises, especially with some of the med ball stuff that Top Velocity has with their start right programs and things like that. We can do something, right? And if
Yeah.
the upper body's bad that day, we could do stuff with our lower bodies. So I think finding a way, the structure is big. I think the program drive, whatever program you're choosing to do, and I'm not trying to sell one or the other. It's
Yeah.
the plan. It's sticking to it because, and it all comes back down to consistency. What's something that you can give a 14-year-old kid that is experiencing 60-90 for the first time? Because I know you've done this, and have you gone from, and I didn't realize this, but I thought at 13U, at least here in Missouri, I thought we pitched at 58 feet. It's actually at 54 feet in Missouri, which it goes from 54 to 60 feet 6 inches. So we're talking
Yeah.
about a 6 foot gap. I didn't realize it was that big of a gap. I think it's the largest gap in pitching distances as you progress. And obviously after 14U, it's all
Big.
60 foot 6 inches, but that's 6 feet. So what could you tell a young pitcher going through that right now that might be playing some fall baseball games that's trying to learn that 6 feet? What's some advice you can give them guys?
All right. I'm gonna try to. You got to help me make sure I don't get too scientifical here. But the thing is what all of them are gonna have the problem of is all of them are gonna be early, because they started with that shorter distance, and with them moving back, every single one of them is gonna want to go early. So they need to find a way to like fight it and sit back and counter backwards more, because that's what their big problem is I guarantee you all of them are going to fly early, they're going to fly open, and they're going to miss up and away, just because they were so used to that shorter distance that's making them go early, 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 and that 60 feet is just going to help them more. So the best advice that I could give them is incorporate more throwing sessions off the mound. Our job as pitchers is to do work off the mound. That's where our job is done at. So it doesn't have to be full effort bullpens all the time. Like just getting in there with the catcher and just getting the feel work of just throwing off a mound can be great. Can just be great to really adapt.
So things like, short distances, maybe, one day is at 45, the next day could be 55, the next day could be 60, kind of working
Yeah.
back and forth. And because right now, like, we just spent the season being full effort, so we don't want to continue to tax the arm. But there's a lot that you can gain from pitching at a 65, 75% range and just having feel good sessions, right? You don't have to go up there kind of being that 100%. I like that. And I just kind of going back to, talking about that, flying open, things like that. That's kind of what I see at the younger age groups, a lot of pushing of the baseball. One,
Mhm.
we don't move well enough. So that's what we try to train in our facility and the Top V is we want our athletes to move. So you talked about the
Yeah.
gym. We got to get stronger in order to understand the muscles it takes to move, things like that. And that's what I tried to express to the kids. Like when our bullpen sessions prior to leading up to our first game was, hey, like let's focus on these things only. not about necessarily even throwing strikes. Let's get the ball 60 feet 6 inches.
Yeah.
And okay, we can get the ball 60 feet 6 inches. Now let's clean this up, get a little bit more drive so I can get the oomph to get to the plate. And
Yeah.
they think oomph is very rotational. So we're getting out here, we get no layback, we get all kinds of problems that happen, and we cannot get the ball back there. We're always arm side run, and it's head height. And then if we try to correct it, it's always in the left-handed batter's box if I'm a right-handed pitcher. So it's somewhere in between. And I do think getting comfortable with the mound and getting comfortable throwing 60 feet is important. But there's got to be a certain point where, hey, we can't be max effort for 20, 30
Yeah.
pitches when I've just spent an entire season, because we do have to let the body recover. But throwing every day is not what we're not talking about stop throwing. We're just talking about stop max effort bullpens kind of deal.
Yeah.
Is
Yes.
there a day in your off season that you'll have max pens, or are you shutting that down?
So, all right, this is where I'll get vulnerable. So this offseason is me going to play my first pro season opened my eyes up to a lot of things on like how I needed to train, because previous to this season I was in the box of Top Velocity for a year and a half. I didn't play a season. I was just here doing strictly off-season training for a year and a half. So I definitely got exposed with some things throughout my season, but instead of like being negative about those things, I looked at them as learning experiences, stuff that I could like change my off-season training to be able to fix those things. So one of my big problems right now is being able to drive and hip shoulder separate, one of our two core principles, and neither of those things I do very well. And so my problem previous to my season was I would drill, do all these drills to try to fix those things, and then that same day I'm jumping on the mound, ripping 100% off the mound, and all those things that I just built went out the window because I went to bad habits, hucking off the mound as hard as I can. Well, now what changed for me is all my throwing sessions now are going to work on those negative weaknesses to build the foundation. So I probably won't be on the mound for a month or two because I'm going to be on flat ground, really figuring out how to drive and hip shoulder separate and really hone in on the foundation of it to really get it to the point where when I get on the mound, it actually translates.
Yeah, that is something that, again, going back to consistency, we always talk about it, is being able to trust what you're training. And I think that when you get into because there's no energy and I'm not saying it's good or bad, but there's no energy at a training session that is the same as when you're facing a hitter or when you're the
100%.
batter facing a pitcher, right? The anxieties are different. The competition brings out some things, and everything that you've trained for goes out the window. And that's part of why we need to be consistent, because when you're feeling those emotions, you have to learn to hone them in, and kind of like take your deep breath and reset, right? And you might have to do that after every single pitch, because a pitch might, you might make a perfect pitch and the umpire might not give you that call. And it's frustrating. So what's most kids do? They just grab the baseball, they rip it, right? And then they're forgetting the breathing techniques. They're forgetting that the hip shoulder separation and things that they've been training for. Now they're just pushing downhill. Well, guess what? Now you just created two bad habits, in two pitches without resetting, refocus. And I think that comes down to the trust, which if I was to evaluate you, I would say that, you had some trust issues with what you were training. Once you got on the bump, you just didn't let that trust take over. He was like, I got to do this. And it's really not about I have to do something. It's about trusting that you're going to do what you have been training to do. And it seems like you reevaluated that from some failures. And so now your attack's a little bit different. You're conscious of it. And even though that might stink a little bit, it is humbling, right? It's like, well, maybe I'm really not what I thought I was. And let's reset. And that's what's cool about it, is you can reset and refocus, right? And I think there's a quote or something that's like, I don't know, whatever. Sometimes I like to get into fun little quotes about like the reset, refocus, and because I think that's what baseball and like diamond sports in general is all about. You have to live pitch to pitch. You can't get to one out without having a pitch, right? So I have to focus on one pitch. And so my defense needs to be ready for one pitch. So if there's 150 pitches in a game, 150 times I need to refocus. I can't take 5 pitches off because I got a guy that I'm playing third base. I got a guy that throws gas, and they hit every baseball to the right side. Nope,
Yeah.
I might have the one play, which might be the biggest play of the game. I have to be focused, pitch to pitch. That's why it's important to reset. It's important to engage, in situations, or have those conversations in between pitches, man. But anyways, Owen, this has been awesome. I loved coming down talking to you because I loved your energy and I loved your vibe. That's why I
Appreciate
wanted to get on the show. I saw some things with you coming back, which I don't know if it was on your Instagram or if it was on Top V's Instagram, but I saw you and I was like, man, that's Owen. Good job for I need to reach back out to him because we had talked about doing some things, and I think the vibe that you bring to the table is good, and for me it's refreshing because I'm 44, so I feel like I'm this old guy that wants to stick to all these old plans. I've had these conversations with Brent about long toss and the training aspect of it, and do as I say kind of thing, and don't ask
Yeah.
questions. And you kind of brought that freshness out and said, hey, ask the questions, because not only does those
Yeah.
questions help the kid out, but it challenges me as a coach, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
asked you those questions.
I want to ask. Yeah, this was the one thing I wanted to ask you today. What was one of the things that made you come around? And yeah, if that's not too broad of a question,
No,
but what was one of the things? Go
you
ahead.
you could ask me anything you want. As long as I'll answer whatever I can, as long as it's we have youth watching this, so I try
Yeah.
to keep it
Yeah.
as
Yeah. Yeah.
PG as I can. But it was the program. It's the program driven mentality. Are you talking about Top Velocity? Why I kind
Just
of came?
just like in general, you know what I mean? Because you're one of
Oh,
the few guys that
I owe this
at
game a
44.
ton. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
I
like
owe.
for being able to like change the mindset, because I guarantee you the mindset that you have now is different than the one that you had 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So what made you have that change?
It's different from the last time I saw you. It's because of the impact a coach can make on a person. Um, I had to have that impact as a young person. I did not like school. I didn't like anything about it. I didn't want to go to school. I just went to school because I wanted to play baseball. It was, but my coaches sat me down and said, if you want to play baseball, you have to do better at schooling. And it was things like that, just the small details, right? I had a child when I was in high school. And so you want to talk about, sorry to my oldest daughter, but nobody at 15 years old wants to have a baby, right? So when people ask me all the time, like, was she a mistake? I obviously didn't plan it. So she was
Yeah.
not prepared for it, things like that. And however, it was the best thing that was given to me because it drove me differently. I needed my
Yeah.
coaches, and listen, I love my parents to death, and they're parents for a reason. My coaches gave me something different, and I always wanted to have that impact later in life. The coolest thing now from when I first started coaching to now is I get to go to weddings. I'm invited to weddings. I'm invited to I get invites for the baby stuff, or when they're having a baby or whatever. I get those notices, and I think that stuff's cool. That means I've had an impact on people, and I feel like baseball in general, baseball, softball, is the way that I can give back to what has given me so much joy in life. Because it's based outside of my family, outside of God in general. I feel like baseball and softball has been everything I've ever needed. I have to give back. So I have to change because the times have changed. I got kids that are more emotional. It does drive me crazy. Don't get me wrong. I don't like the sensitivity that we have. I don't know where it comes from. I'm fighting it. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, I know that I'm not sure if you wanted that question to be answered to be long, but I still got so much more because I have a heart for this. I love this sport. It drives me crazy when I can't get someone to understand how talented they are, to
Yeah.
believe in themselves. And I'm like, man, I was a overweight fat kid that was told that I couldn't do nothing. I did
Yeah.
something. I got to coach at the collegiate level. I got paid to coach, which was awesome, right?
Yeah.
And I played till I was 40, and I could hit home runs at 396 pounds facing guys that threw 90. You
Yeah.
don't think that I walked on that field and all those guys looked at me and was like, "Who's this fat kid on the field?" I
Yeah.
loved it. I was like, "Yep, I'm gonna have a beer after I hit a homer. I'm gonna have a Kit Kat. I'm gonna have
Yeah.
maybe a ballpark hot dog. I am gonna be the next Babe Ruth of the men's league that I was
Yeah.
playing in. That's who I was." And give me some doubt. I loved it, man. Like I told I was gonna be a failure my whole life by people. Not obviously not my inner circle, but you never make play baseball. You're too heavy. Well,
Exactly.
I wasn't going to play professional sports because I was too heavy because there is still a stereotype there. But, I graduated high school 260. I was a all conference athlete, all metro athlete. I got to play in a high school all-star game. And again, as the biggest kid there. And I was on
Yeah.
Mizzou's field, and Mizzou's football coach was like, "Hey, you want to play linebacker for me, not first
Yeah.
base, third base, or catch?" I was like, "No, sir, I love baseball." And
Yeah.
and it I obviously I love this sport, and anything I could do to give back. That's why I do this show, is to give my opinions. It's why I've been working with Brian for 3+ years now. I think it's been 3+ years. I enjoy working and doing things with the community, man. It's so much bigger than just X's and O's or wins and losses. There's so much more passion that's driven.
Yeah. You're doing a great job, dude. You're doing a great job.
Well, you'll be that same. I mean, you don't work this hard to just quit. When your time is up, and because there is going to be a time where you have to hang up your career, and whether or not it's as an adult or you play till you're 50, there's going to be a time, and I feel like it's what can you give somebody that's going to ask you, how did you do this? What is your
Yeah.
story? And I love telling it because it's not been easy. 15 years old, finding out you're going to be a dad is. I didn't even change the oil in my car yet, and I was changing diapers.
Yeah.
I could change a tire in
Yeah.
my truck before, or I was changing diapers before I changed my first tire. You know what I
Talk
mean?
about
It's
a wake
like,
up.
dude, you want to talk about failure? Like baseball to me was like, this is simple, man. Like, and I
Yeah.
and I,
This is.
I yeah, I do think that's what helped me though. It's like I have a baby, I have a
Yeah.
child that is that I cannot screw that up. So if I
Yeah.
screw up a little bit on the baseball field, I'll be all right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was kind of that's kind of my vibe and kind of how I got to where I am. And I strive for it, man. I tell you what, I don't have much hair left because of this. And it's become more challenging because I don't have. I feel like I don't have a lot of support sometimes from parents.
Yeah.
I can't be tough. And that's the hard part. And I will tell you that it's starting to drive me away from wanting to be a coach, not away from being a trainer. I'm talking about
Yeah.
just the coaching side of the game, because I am still old school. And
Yeah.
and it stinks because this is what I love to do, but
Yeah.
it's becoming harder and more difficult because it's the support has to be from everybody, right? It's got to be from the player, the parent, the coach, coaching staff, other players, and it's becoming tougher, and it's becoming a heck of a lot easier doing these podcasts, working with Brian, going to do high school baseball games. I know I don't have nobody chewing me out. I don't have somebody telling me that
Yeah.
I'm a terrible coach. I don't have to argue with
Yeah.
umpires. I just get to complain about everybody else, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I'd much rather do that than be complained about. So, oh
Exactly.
man, that's the first time I think I've been asked that in quite some time, and that had some emotions in it. I had a lot more. Man, thanks for asking that because I don't think anybody's ever asked me that question. That was
Yeah. I
awesome.
mean, I love asking that question universally to a lot of the dads that come in that bring their kids into camp because obviously our ways tend to be a little bit unconventional and tend to be new to a lot of guys. So it's like the older crowd, I love asking that question to because some part of them has been willing to swallow their pride with the 20 plus years of being coached a certain way and willing to put their son into a program that they know nothing about, but they are willing to give it a chance. And like
Yep.
that's all, and that's huge. You know what I mean? Like it's huge because there's always the stereotype that people don't change, that people are stuck in their ways and stuff like that. And with you, I got to see first example of somebody that was willing to at least learn, at least give it a chance. And like that's why it's cool to ask you that question, because it's genuine. I know that when you're coming at me with these answers, it's actually genuine because I watched you do it. I
Yeah.
watched you come in here your first day in Covington, Louisiana, and go through everything. So
I, I
it's
I
cool.
left with I left with a different thought process. That's for sure. But if you don't change, things will pass you by, right?
Yeah,
And again, it's adapting to a pitch to pitch, and the selections. Like it's always about change, and you got to be comfortable with those things. And I do have an ego. I still have an ego. I tried to challenge Brent on some things, and he understood where I was coming from. He didn't laugh at me. He didn't make me feel small or big or
Exactly.
anything like that. He just gave me a perception of his views, and I had the choice whether or not to accept it or not. Right. So that's what I loved about the experience. And again, if you're not willing to change, things will pass you by. You will grow old. You will fall on deaf ears, whatever the cliche may be, right? So you always have to be willing to change. You've had to do it this year, right? You've had to
yep,
change your process so that you can be prepared for next season. Hopefully, you get a chance to play pro ball again. Owen, man, I appreciate that question, and you're right. It's the old school ways, stuck in your ways, learning to change, trying to adapt so that you can be the best that you can be for the people that you're trying to lead. I love that. But
yeah,
thanks again, man, and shout out to Game 7 Baseball, game7baseball.com. I think they have a few weeks left in fall. Again, Prime Sports Midwest, October 5th, bat demo in Fenton, Missouri, 1550 Ocello Drive. Owen, I know that part of this conversation was I wanted to kind of get you out there too, because I think that you have like this new school vibe with this old school kind of somewhere in between. You have both ends of the
yeah,
spectrum that you
yeah.
can help youngsters out. How can we follow you on your socials? Are you just on IG or?
Yeah, 100%. My biggest one is probably Instagram. You can follow me at Owen James Little. Reach out to me in the DMs on any questions. I'm always available. I'm always here to answer questions.
Yeah, man, I did. I texted you right away or messaged you on Instagram, and I was like, hey, bud, I even had your phone number, and it's like within minutes, it's like, here it is, and you're always available. I love that piece. Owen,
Always.
again, thank you, man. Thank you for your time. Thank you for that question because it did bring some joy to me, actually, more than you thought. So, thanks again, and good luck with your journey and keep grinding, man. And if you got anything else that you ever want to share, I'll be more than happy to talk to you. Maybe I'll come down and see you again.
Yeah,
For some. I had a blast going down there and going through the training process myself. So,
good, good. I
Owen,
appreciate you, man. Thank you. This was cool.
yeah, thank you, man. I'll have you on again. Okay.
Hey, perfect. Sounds good.
All right, buddy. Have a good day.
Hey, you too. Bye.
Bye.